We are discussing an important aspect of India-US trade ties or India-US strategic ties. 2 days ago, Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump announced what was the finalization of a trade deal between the two countries. Relations between the two countries have not been the best in the past year or so, or since the Operation Sindoor was conducted by India against Pakistan in May last year. Trade had been a irksome point between the two countries, which have been, at least for the past 2 decades, strategic partners in terms of military equipment, and also in the Indo-Pacific. I'll take you through a road which is important to learn and understand how India and US are interconnected in terms of defense, especially India's air prowess or air attack prowess or air power is somewhat dependent on the US at the moment. First of all, I'll address the issue of planes. The public sector plane maker Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is scheduled to make 180 Tejas Mark-1A planes. These planes are to be powered by General Electric's F404 engines. The plane's delivery was to start in 2024 March. The deliveries have not yet started, largely due to the fact that General Electric has not been able to provide their 404 engines to the HAL. The HAL today issued a statement saying that 5 of its planes are now fully ready for the IAF, and it awaits 9 more. Its 9 more planes are ready, but it awaits engines from the General Electric. The second part of the Indian-American aero-engine deal is a transfer of technology or a make in India for making the next generation of engines called the F414. Now, F414 is a more powerful engine than the F404. The F414 is supposed to power the next version of the Tejas called the Tejas Mark-2. Now, this in 2023 was agreed upon that it will be a transfer of technology. Almost 3 years will be completed in July for this announcement. So far, there is not a thing which has moved forward in terms of announcing a formal agreement between HAL and General Electric to make the engine in India. Again, India is looking to have at least 160-70 of the Tejas Mark-2 variants. The engines are needed. Collectively, the Tejas Mark-1A, the Tejas Mark-2 production line will require at least 600 to 700 engines to be made in India. Now, this production line will depend upon how good India-US relations are. India has been unhappy. Last July, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh called up his counterpart Pete Hegseth in the US and told him about the delay in supply of engines. A few engines did start coming in. So far, the General Electric has supplied 6 engines to the HAL for making the Tejas Mark-1A. Second point, why is this important? Because India is pinning its hopes on the Tejas and its variants to be the part of the fleet of the Indian Air Force. If the engines don't come in, the planes get delayed, or the supply of planes get delayed. India is already operating at almost 29 squadrons against a requirement of around 42 squadrons for a simultaneous two-front war with Pakistan and China. The next part of the Indo-US deal is the armed UAVs called the MQ-9B made by American company General Atomics. India has already agreed to buy them, 31 of those. Those are important because because the planes can do surveillance. The UAVs can do surveillance. They are also armed to carry out attacks. India has taken 2 of these on lease around 5-6 years ago. The 2 UAVs doing surveillance on lease, proved their mettle during the standoff with China in 2020, and India used them extensively for getting reconnaissance pictures. The third part which India is looking at America is getting the Boeing P-8I long-range maritime planes. The Navy operates 12 of those. India wants 6 more to have a end-to-end coverage across the Indo-Pacific, which will provide a combined one picture to the Indian Navy and its commanders sitting in Delhi and also in other bases. Then what is happening in the Indo-Pacific, a kind of a maritime domain awareness is needed. The fourth important part is the MTA program, or called the Medium Transport Aircraft Program. Lockheed Martin, the US company, is in race to make those 80 planes out here in India. It has already said that it will set up an MRO hub once it gets a tender to make these planes in India. India already flies the C-130J, a famous plane made by Lockheed Martin, which is part of the Air Force fleet. India also uses the American plane C-17 made by Boeing for its long-range strategic lifting. It is also using 2 separate helicopters for the Indian Air Force, the Apache and the Chinook, both made by the Boeing. It is also using the maritime helicopters made by Lockheed Martin on the Indian naval warships. This has been done in the past 20 years or so, post the Cold War, when the two sides started opening to each other and India started buying American equipment. Now, India is looking at what I told you at the start of the program, a transfer of technology for the F414 engine, which will be vital, and this trade deal which was announced 2 days ago, is expected to iron out several differences or some points between the two sides to have a transfer of technology for the engine on which India's air power or its fighter fleet hinges upon. We will keep on bringing you updates about the India-US defense ties. With me is Tribune photographer Manas Ranjan Bhoi.